My mom never wanted me. She came from a deeply Mormon family and got knocked up by a Southern Baptist boy. I suspect she intentionally got pregnant so that my dad would forever be tied to her. She didn't know he'd love me more than he would ever love her. She only ever saw me as competition. There's a story I've been told many times from different people, and it's always been told the same way. When my uncle first saw me, he said, "My God, she's the most beautiful baby I've ever seen." My mom's go-to response started that day. "Thanks, she looks like me." She couldn't have me believing I was pretty in private. She was always so casually cruel to me. My dad would defend me, and she did not like that at all. The divorce wasn't my fault. Dad still loved me. He swore he would never forget me, and that we would see each other again soon. My mom kept me from him until I was an adult. He died a year and a half after I found him. When I was going through his belongings, I found letters my mom had written to him. He kept all of them. The entire time she was telling us she had no idea where he was, that he had run from his child support obligations. She was writing to him. She knew where he was all along. She didn't want me to know. I don't know what my dad's response was to any of her letters. If he wrote back, she didn't keep any of them. The B of it is, the entire time she was telling me she had no idea where my dad was, she would tell me how badly she wished she knew, because she didn't want me anymore. She wished she could send me to my dad, but he didn't want me either. Yes, he did. My mom has been married many times since the divorce, and each one of her husbands noticed me. One husband said to her, "I clearly didn't marry you for your looks. Now, Exmo." Instead of setting her husband straight, she packed everything I owned into my car while I was sleeping over at a friend's house. Even the driver's seat was packed. She had the spare key to my car. So I left and made something of my life. I've been married a quarter of a century to the same person, and we have an amazing child together. I have a great life. It's not perfect, but I have so much to be grateful for. And my mom is constantly there with the subtle jabs and digs, lest I get too comfortable. A few years ago, my mom's boyfriend decided he couldn't leave his wife and children for her after all. She called me crying. I happened to be on a road trip with my husband who was driving. "Boyfriend is leaving me," she was hysterical. She suddenly had nowhere to go because she couldn't afford the house they were renting without her boyfriend's paycheck. The problem was, boyfriend calculated how much child support and alimony was going to be and decided he couldn't afford it. She wanted to come live with us. My husband could hear my mom's side of the conversation because she was wailing and we were in the car. He didn't want to be rude by interrupting the conversation, but I could tell he was panicking. He can't stand her. There's no way she can live under his roof. Not peacefully anyway. Husband is retired military. He has zero ducks to give when it comes to her. He hates putting me in the middle though. He bites his tongue. A lot. He's my knight in shining armor. I said, "When I was a child, you used to tell me that I didn't have a home. Remember? You said that was your home, and when I turned 18, I'd have to go find my own home. Remember? Well, I made my own home. Go find your own." Then I hung up on her. My husband just laughed. "I can't believe you did that." Actually, yes, I can. I haven't talked to my mom in a month, and now I'm lonely. I wish I had a functional relationship with my mom. It's only natural that OP misses her. OP deserves a mother that she never had. OP misses a relationship with a mom that she doesn't have, and yet despite growing up with a mother like that, OP has done amazing things for herself. OP doesn't owe her mother a single thing, except maybe compassion for how screwed up she is. But that doesn't excuse her for her behavior, and that doesn't mean that including her in OP's life now would give OP anything positive. I think after everything she put OP through, OP is way better without her in her life. I know it's hard, but I think it's going to protect OP from more heartache. Don't you think so, guys? And now let's see if the community agrees with me. Chaitaku says, "OP, you've already got a good list of reasons to never speak to this woman again. Keeping you from your father, kicking you out at 18, belittling you. You have better people to feel loneliness over, and she isn't one of them. You are an absolute rock star with that line about finding her own home. I had to cut off a family member whose actions nuked any family ties I had with them, and doing so left me feeling guilty about it. Took a while to get past that, but good family and friends help. Probably could have used a therapist, but meh. Don't call her." American Girl says, "My advice? Stop wishing for a different mother, because she's never going to be the one you want or need. Make peace with yourself and look for that love from people who are actually capable of providing it." Polar Bear says, "It is hard to cut your mom out. It doesn't make you not normal. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done to cut my mom out of my life, but you can do it. I will say it makes such a difference for your mental health and marriage. I still miss her sometimes, but you have to remember what she put you and everyone else through. I, 28 female, met my fiance, 28 male, during college, and we have a great relationship. Last year we got engaged, and we're planning the wedding for this fall. While he has an awesome dad and really sweet sisters, his mother is kind of a sore spot for him. She is separated from his dad, and from what I've heard and witnessed, the family doesn't get along much with her. If you met her, you'd understand why. She's super judgmental and rude, and barely has a nice word to say about her own kids, let alone me. Unfortunately, my fiancé, being her only son and the youngest child, is her blatant favorite. She really wants him to be mommy's boy, but he's not that way at all and does a great job of handling her and keeping his distance, which honestly he prefers. Upon news of our engagement, she was super excited, very uncharacteristically. We then all realized that she basically wanted to frame the whole day around her. Think everyone should be praising me for birthing this boy. He couldn't even get married without me. From there, the craziness really ramped up. She was coming along with him to tux fittings, trying to plan out the music, even our first dance, and getting angry at me for daring to choose a dress she didn't like. The rest of his family and I were actually beginning to toy with the idea of uninviting her based on this behavior. And as wrong as it kind of initially feels, this is a pretty exceptional case, and honestly, her actions were starting to make us dread our own wedding. A further incident a few days later, where she told my son she wanted to walk me down the aisle so she could have a moment with her son at the altar, made me, my husband, and my future in-laws snap. We very recently arranged for her to come over to our home, where myself and my husband sat her down in the peace and quiet, and gently explained to her that we no longer wanted her to attend the wedding. She got really angry and immediately flew off the handle at me, and not her son, as though I was the only one who had influenced the rest of the family to uninvite her. My frustration at her boiled over, and without shouting, I stood up and told her that I wanted her to stop yelling, and that she had no right to speak to me as she was. When I realized she was about to blow up again, I cut her off with, "In case you don't know, I'm the one marrying your son, not you." She didn't say anything else, just snatched up her bag and left. She hasn't spoken to me since, but she's trying to get her son to change his mind. Believe me when I say he will not. She wants an apology from me, and while my husband, and the rest of the family, don't think I did wrong, I kind of wonder if my comment was unnecessary, and whether it would have been better to stay the calm and collected party. I'm just so done with her, and wanted to let her know exactly how I felt. That woman literally wants to marry her son. OP spoke the truth. She wants to get to the altar to have a moment with her son. Wow. This kind of delusional behavior will only get worse over time, especially if it isn't squashed. Either OP and her husband set hard boundaries now, or she will be throwing tantrums at every milestone for the rest of their lives. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Stonewall Brigade 21 says, "I wouldn't care what she thinks. It seems everyone agrees she should not be at the wedding, so 100% not the a-hole. P.S. You may want to hire security to keep her out." Cassie W309 says, "Not the a-hole. You did things exactly correctly. If you didn't put your foot down now, you would have had a lifetime of drama with her. This post should be saved, stickied as an example of how to properly deal with a terrible mother-in-law. And your fiancé deserves a high five for having your back." Fuzzy Mom 2005 says, "Not the a-hole. I would have done the same, but with more profanity. Just make sure your vendors have passwords in case she tries to sabotage your plans, and security for when she tries to crash the wedding and or reception." I, 36 female, have a 16-year-old son, Liam. His dad bailed on us when he was 1. He was too much of a coward to tell me himself he didn't want to be a dad anymore, and got his parents to tell me this. I was devastated. His parents weren't very happy with him and tried to convince him to come back, but he refused. I moved on and met my now husband Daniel, 38, when Liam was 4. He is good to Liam and sees him as his own. Liam knows that Daniel is not his biological dad, but that doesn't matter to him. Daniel loves kickboxing, and it didn't take long before Liam became passionate about it as well. And so Daniel enrolled him into a kickboxing club, and they both trained a lot together, and Liam started winning local tournaments. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my ex-sister, April, had been sending my ex these updates on Liam. Despite me moving on, I still had contact with my ex's parents, and my son had a relationship with them. We are always invited to family events like birthdays and holidays, and they are fine with my husband. Not once had my ex shown up while we were there. I did know that my ex did mend his relationship with his family at some point. I told my ex's parents that the door was open for him to visit and have a relationship with Liam if he wanted when Liam was younger, but he never did take me up on my invitation. So on to what happened at my son's cousin Sophie's 16th birthday. We showed up, and the first thing I noticed was April looking stressed, and knew why when I noticed my ex was sitting at a table with his girlfriend. Liam came in beside me, and my ex nodded at him and said, "Hey, son." Liam froze. There was this horrible pause, and my ex said, "I heard you're doing good in your fighting. You definitely got that from my side." Before I could say anything, Liam said, "Don't try and claim on something you never had a part in." Everyone was quiet and watching us, and April tried to intervene, but my ex said I raised him to be a brat, and Liam just went off on him, and a lot of heated words came out from my son that I've never heard him say before. He called him a deadbeat and said he abandoned us and that he was just wasted off space. Daniel had to come in and only caught the end of it. He had to drag out Liam before it escalated. We ended up leaving and Liam was crying. April texted later and said she wants an apology from Liam for ruining Sophie's birthday. I told her to let him calm down first, but she kept pushing it until I snapped and said I'm not going to get him to apologize for telling the truth. She called me an a-hole. Since then, I've been getting pressured from my ex's side to apologize. I haven't told Liam yet because he's still hurting from that day. Am I the a-hole? Well, I don't understand why OP's son needs to apologize, as what he said is 100% true. April is the one who should be apologizing to OP's son, as it was cowardly on her not to tell that OP's ex will be there, and she wrecked Sophie's birthday, not OP's son. 16 is old enough to decide who he wants in his life. He has been aware of the situation with his dad. He has made no effort in 15 years to reach out. He doesn't get to pop in now. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Space Jesus is Here says, "Don't you dare ask your son to apologize. He did nothing wrong, not one thing. The adults who thought a surprise was the right way to reintroduce a deadbeat dad are morons. The loser trying to casually take credit for the efforts of a son he didn't raise is also a moron. You need to tell your son that you had no idea what his relatives were planning, and that you support him 100% for his very normal response, given the situation. Then, you need to keep him from seeing that side of the family until they apologize for springing all this on you, and swear not to force their scummy son, brother into your kid's life without asking first." Pleasant Test 6088 says, "Not the a-hole, but what was April thinking? That was neither the time nor the place for an encounter between Liam and Bio Dad. Unfortunately, it was hard on Sophie as well, and she is equally innocent in this. It might be a kind gesture on your part to reach out to her and to apologize to her for the awkwardness of the situation, even though you didn't create it. I have to wonder if April is demanding an apology from her deadbeat, classless brother, but I highly doubt it." Sarah Gill 42 says, "Not the a-hole at all. Both April and your ex are. This was not the place to try to reintroduce him back into Liam's life. April owes you and Liam, more so Liam, a massive apology. Edit. Furthermore, Liam should be asked if he wants to let your ex back in his life. He's old enough to make that decision for himself." There were complications when my son was born, so they whisked him away from us for a while before we even saw him. It got really weird. They brought him back to us finally, and it's so painful to admit, but I looked at him and crystal clear thought, "Who's this child?" That thought, I've told no one ever. I felt horribly guilty for that flash of a thought, but I couldn't let it go. I was groggy and brainless from everything, but still it sliced through my mind. They tucked a super chubby, super ruddy, super lovable and squeezable baby into my arms, but he looked nothing like any of my other kids when they were born, or any of the other babies in the extended family. They were all fair-skinned, slim and long. He was super pudgy, darker-skinned and adorable, but I had a major brain disconnect when they handed him to me. Fast forward many years. He has no familial traits. None of my children look anything alike, but you can trace similarities between them. But I can't find any similarities between his demeanor or physical structure and the rest of the entire extended family. Not eyes, not lips, not smile, not hands, not feet, not personality or anything else. Obviously, this definitely happens to families, but I've always wondered. And I love him insanely. Again, fast forward many years to today. He was just diagnosed with a heartbreaking disease. It's something you would think would show up somewhere else in the family, but no. So now I can't help wondering if he's not mine, and whether I should secretly try to get a DNA test to see if he might be someone else's child, to see if we can learn about other possible health issues. But I don't really know what I'd do with the information. What happens if I learn he's not mine? Do I just try to get the family history? Or do I break? Do I tell him? Do I tell the family? Do I go after the hospital? Do I mess up his life? In my state of overload, I'm guessing I'd probably unwittingly go after the hospital at least. Even though I kid myself I'm a good person, I know myself well enough to know I'd pick up the phone immediately. But I hope I'd just call one person I could trust, instead of drama dumping everywhere. I hope. And screw telling his dad, who would treat him like he was defective. There's a reason he's an ex. Am the Dancing Degen says, "My mother thought the same with me. She's blonde and pale, and my brother is a ginger. I was black hair, black eyes. Turns out, paternal grandpa is mixed, but white presenting. It's called a throwback." Bulgarian Lily says, "Get a DNA test done to see if the heart condition is genetically based, so you can look out for it with your other children. Perfectly reasonable thing to do. The fact that other things might show up is a bonus." Jordan Janil says, "Whoa, that's some heavy stuff to unpack. First off, no judgment here for having those thoughts. Complicated situations can stir up all sorts of emotions. But secretly DNA testing your son? That's a whole new level. It's totally understandable to want clarity, especially with his health on the line. But the fallout from discovering he's not biologically yours could be massive. And then there's the whole dilemma of whether to spill the beans to your ex or keep it under wraps. I'd say take a step back, maybe chat with a pro, and really think about the consequences before diving into DNA testing. This is some serious stuff, and there's no easy answer. I say not the a-hole, because learning the truth will make it easier for you and your child.